Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today I am joined by two very special guests, Mrs. Miriam Zakon from ArtScroll and Mrs. Libby Lazewnik from Baltimore, two veteran writers who need no introduction. Thank you so much to both of you for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Our pleasure.
I should mention, just so that our viewers know, that both of you paid a visit here to ArtScroll. This was not planned, this conversation, but when we have two iconic writers in the house, we had the chutzpah to ask you if you'd sit down with us for a little while to schmooze. And one of the things that I learned from both of you is that you're actually old friends. Tell us about that, maybe Miriam.
Emphasis on old. Libby and I went to first grade together, and I have the little picture that prove it. And then
Where was that?
In Beis Yaakov of Borough Park, Rabbi Aaron Beis Yaakov. Then they split. They moved around. We're both from Borough Park, and they moved around for a few years. We were separated just because there were a lot of classes. And from fifth grade through today, we've been friends. We've worked together. We have done a lot of laughing together, a lot of schmoozing, and it's just a really special friendship. You know, I know her whole family. She knows my whole family. We lived near each other when Libby lived in Harnof. We were also neighbors, chavrusas, everything.
So I have a unique vantage point because thinking back, I grew up really on a lot of both of your writings, whether it was the Baker's Dozen and the BY Times, if I could admit it. Your column in the Yated, which you've been writing for now over 3 decades, I think it is, that you've been writing a continuous column, something like that. Both of you, tell us how you got into writing, and when did you know that this was going to become a career for each of you?
Well, I think I came by it honestly because my father, Alav Shalom, he was a writer even before the war in Europe. They called him Eli the Poet because he just wrote poems, and he wrote in Hebrew or Yiddish, and he had that type of writer's mind, always wanting to put down his feelings on paper. He didn't write fiction, but he wrote. And his letters were a work of art, like his friends kept them. And then, but he never got to publish anything because of the war. So, and when he came to America, English wasn't his first language, so he never published anything. But I have it in my blood. From the time I could hold a pen, I've been writing poems, stories, and I knew I was going to be a writer because that's all I wanted to do.
What was your first published item that you recall?
In my 8th grade yearbook, maybe, or newsletter, whatever, newspaper.
How about you?
Yeah, well, Libby and I have an identical twin sister who looks just like me, and 3 of us were a threesome every Friday. We go 17th Avenue, 60th Street to the library, and we come out, each of us with a stack of books. We each, I'd read a stack sheet, and then we'd look around the next Friday again. So I've been a reader since forever, and I don't even remember. I mean, I did make a serious newsletter, and I believe it was in 3rd grade, called the Imagination Society. So that, and I think in either 2nd or 3rd grade, they actually published a poem that my twin sister and I wrote in the PTA thing, and I've been writing ever since. So, okay, if you want to know how professionally, so I'm newlywed, and this has been my dream for years. I want to be a writer, which sounds ridiculous. What do you want to do? I want to be a writer, and we're moving to Eretz Yisrael, and my husband, Alav Shalom, gave me a present. And he gave me business cards. And this is in the days when you had to go to a printer. And he printed me up business cards that said Miriam Zakon, writer, editor, translator. And suddenly I was a writer. I had a business card to prove it. And I became a writer, translator, and editor.
Wow.
And,
what are you most proud of when you're looking back of years? Between both of you, you probably have written about dozens of books between
a lot of
both
words.
of you. You're still writing, you write a weekly ArtScroll column that goes into a newspaper. You're writing magazine columns, newspaper columns. There's a lot going on.
And books.
And books, and you haven't slowed down. Is there anything in particular that you look back, maybe because of the difficult nature of the project, that you say, wow, that was a monumental achievement?
Yeah. Was it ArtScroll who put out Positive Word Power?
Yeah.
So the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation asked me to do a children's version of that, based on that, taking each lesson, and I had to weave it into the chapters of a novel for kids. That was very challenging, but I think I felt such satisfaction when I was done because it was such a worthwhile project.
Speaking of impactful, I should mention your husband, Rabbi Nachman Zakon, Zechrano Vracha, penned the weekly Parsha series, which, talking about an impact, that's a series that Kanai is selling remarkably well and is making a huge difference.
It's funny because I was trying to think what I'm most proud of. Baruch Hashem, there's a lot. But I thought this is like you're asking me which kid do I like better. I love my books. I don't have, but as you mentioned that, yeah, the one I guess that certainly I think made the most impact was my work together with my husband Nachman. I mean, he wrote it and I edited him. And it's interesting when you're an editor of your husband. It's a good Shalom Bayis lesson. And I think that's probably the one certainly that I should be the most proud of because it's just such a beautiful set.
From your years having written and been published, do you have any tips to people out there? There are, as much as writing is a lost art, there are talented writers. We see a young crop of writers, people putting out books. Any tips that you could give to people? Is it just as simple as writing so that you can learn how to write, or reading? What do you think the secret is?
I would say three things. Number one, read, so you get to understand what the music of good language sounds like. Read good books. And number two, sit down and write. You know, people procrastinate even things that they love to do, so you have to make it a steady thing. And also, when it comes to editing your own work, there are two fallacies that people fall into. One is that they either don't edit enough or that they edit too much. I once met a young woman who was editing the same short story for 5 years. It was never finished, never perfect. At some point, you have to say "maspeak," you know. And also, you have to edit your own work, you know, in the other direction. You have to. The first draft is never usually your best. You should go back.
How about you? You have any tips?
I think Libby put it pretty well. The only, you know, in addition to being a writer, I've been an editor for many years, and I do acquisitions here at ArtScroll, so I get to see a lot of manuscripts. And first, you write from the heart, what you want to write. But if you want to publish, you also have to recognize that there's two people in this room. There's you, and there's the reader. Whether it's making sure the message is coming through clearly to your reader. And yeah, I'll be honest, you have to make sure that the reader is interested. You know, if you love, you know, the appetites of what sharks like to eat, that's great, but very few people are really interested in that.
So I was going to ask you, as far as the acquisitions email, that you get emails literally every day, people sending in all different types of manuscripts. Yeah. How do you determine, okay, this is a manuscript that I should bring up with the editorial board? And how do you decide?
So let me say, I asked Mechila, I hate rejecting manuscripts. And just because I reject it, I mean, you know, if I can mention Harry Potter here, Harry Potter had many, many rejections before. And the list
many other great authors.
Of great authors who were rejected, I would like to think I haven't rejected Harry Potter, but they can be rejected for many reasons. They can be accepted for many reasons. Look, I've been in this business, Baruch Hashem, for many years, and you get a certain sense of what people want to read. And that you can write a really wonderful book, but I do have to get a book that people will read. ArtScroll has very, very high standards, and I think people wear that. And we're often the first stop for a manuscript. And hopefully I can say, wow, great manuscript. The best and the most rewarding to me is when I get a manuscript which just needs some work, but it's very promising. And I love, that's my second love after writing, is working with authors and trying to get it to be the very best. And I've had some authors who I did that with, and it's fabulous. It's a great feeling.
You get to see the project come to fruition.
Yeah. It's like I'm the midwife who gets this help.
Right. Well, people who put out books, they all say it's like giving birth to a child.
So sometimes I'm giving the birth, but I'm the doula, I'm the midwife. It's a fabulous, fantastic feeling.
That's tremendous. I have to ask this: literary pet peeves. I'm sure you have it. Every writer, every editor has it, especially when you're an editor and you're editing other people's writings, and there are things that you see people do time and time again that just irk you. What would you say that is?
Well, you're more of the editor. I edit sometimes.
What I say is I'm nastier than she is. Okay. Keep it simple, guys. Use simpler language. You're not impressing me by using really fancy words unless there is a very good reason for it. You know, it's not better writing if the reader has to read it 3 times to figure out what in the world you're trying to say. Keep it simple. That's about the only one. I mean, anything else?
Also, I've noticed that since I've written for several decades now, over time, as people's way of talking has changed, also writing has changed.
Yes.
My early books are much denser, longer paragraphs. Now it's chick, 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 chick. You know, people have no attention span. Writers don't even have much of an attention span. So that's something I also look
So
for.
really, you recommend that people adapt with the
I'm
times
saying if you don't
almost,
want,
right?
like Mimi said, you don't want to lose your readers. You don't want to bore them. When I wrote my first book, Shira's Summer, I remember I didn't know what I was doing, and I would sit down and write a chapter, and then the next day I'd come back, sit down, read over the chapter, and if there was anything that bored me or lost me or that wasn't entertaining me as a reader, out it went. That's how I edited my own work.
Right.
You have to remember, like Mimi said, there are two people in the room. You can't forget about the reader.
So specific projects that both of you worked on, Baker's Dozen we mentioned before. Had you come up with the concept?
Well, she created it, Mimi.
All right, so
Tell us a little about the background.
basically, I wanted to do something new, and I asked around. I asked my sister who was in America. I was already in ArtScroll. Like, what are the kids reading? And they were reading these series books. I don't know if I dare say the name. And so we said, let's do it, but let's do it for From Kids. I was actually, at first it was just like an idea, but when I started reading the stuff that there weren't a lot of children's books out there, when I started reading them, I was really very upset. I said, basically, girls should not be reading this stuff with the girlfriends, the boyfriends. You know, there's a lot of stuff in there that was really not appropriate for our. So we came up with, why BY Times? Because it's about a bunch of girls. We were always a bunch of girls in school, and I love journalism and I love writing, so I was going to do. They say write about things you love, and this is what I love. And it just was. So we had a lot of fun with that one. I am Leah Klein. I can admit it. I did a nice portfolio of. I did a character study of every single character, and I would do the plots. And I was looking for a good writer to write it, and I found my friend Libby.
I became her assistant.
And you wrote the first.
I wrote the first of the
few.
BY Times and the Baker's Dozen, and then
Okay,
many
and
during the.
Dozen,
and we plotted them all together.
When
also.
BY Times took off so well, we said let's do another, and we decided to do a family one. And I can tell you the story before. I'm walking around, and there was for the younger people won't know, James Baker was a Secretary of State. And he didn't like Israel very much, and he wanted to cut up Israel and give it away to our friendly neighbors. And someone had just put up a big sign, and this really, I could see myself on the street. I'm walking up and down thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Big sign that says, Baker, cut your own loaf. It was cute political sign. And it just popped. I didn't pop. See, after the Shema, I said, let's call it The Baker's Dozen Have 12 Kids. And then I said, aha, a Baker's Dozen is 13. So I said, okay, we'll have 12 kids, and the last book, the 13th baby will be born, and the kids will be upset we're not the Baker's Dozen. He said, no, kids, Baker's Dozen is 13. And that was a lot of fun, because I had to create 12, because the other one's a baby, 12 kids.
And 5 of them were quintuplets.
And the quintuplets, well, of course, twins like me are just boring. Quintuplets are exciting. And I gave one, what's her name? I don't remember her name anymore. One had vision problems. Tikva had vision problems. When you're doing it, you're trying to think already of ways to plot.
Right.
And Libby and I think, I can't swear to it, I think it was 38 books we plotted in 2.5 years.
Wow.
So that was...
Because we put them out very frequently,
Right.
and we would just come up with a plot, and either one of us would write it or we'd give it out to someone, and then we'd edit it. But we made up all the stories, all the plots.
Yeah.
So typically when you write a series of books, or let's say, Libby, when you're writing a novel, you plot the book beginning to end?
This has been a machlokas.
We have a chilukei deos on this since forever.
Since
We used to
forever.
give writing and publishing workshops, and at the workshop we'd say, we have different opinions on this, take what you want from it. So Mimi believes in starting with a great idea and a great character and a great situation and running with it, and you make it up as you go.
And that's it.
And for me, I feel that plotting ahead, not every detail obviously, but as much as you can, the main flow of the story allows you to have foreshadowing and knowing where you're going. Like, I can't imagine writing without that, to make it more powerful. So I do it my way. And
See, I'm writing, and someone said, "Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
We can use this for foreshadowing." And
Right.
And then develop
you
the
know
plot
what's
based
going to
on that.
happen,
Right.
and you foreshadow. I do something and say,
And you say-
foreshadowing. I'm going to do that.
Right, but Mimi did realize at some point that she at that time was writing mostly short stories that were maybe loosely collected into a book, like the Coens of Tzfat, whereas I was writing long novels that needed more
Right.
plotting. So
Right.
But
when you write
I
long-
did mine, I did a serial,
Right.
and which turned into a novel.
you still did it.
And I was just looking at my original pitch for it, and about 2/3 never happened, and about 2/3 of the book did happen. I just like to.
Well, I do make some changes. I don't stick to it completely, but I like to know where I'm going.
You mean
where-
once you're done, you may go back and then reformulate?
No, even as I'm going, it's sometimes something interesting. It will be an interesting conversation that could lead to something new, and I will incorporate it. Or if I want to make it longer, or I want to get rid of something, I need more of a plot, so I'll make another subplot.
But
Or something.
especially with novels, how do you come up with the plots and ideas? Do you have any creative place that you could go to get those ideas?
I think that's like probably the most frequently asked question that I'm asked. Where do I get my ideas?
Right.
And I really get them. First of all, I get them anywhere. Sometimes from my childhood or people that I know. Sometimes just I can see someone on the street or hear a snippet of a conversation, and it will just ignite something. If your mind is just like they say, shul rabbis that have to give a drasha every week, like they're always on the lookout.
Always on the
So
lookout.
you're receptive to those things. And sometimes I'll just say, Hashem, help me, and he'll just drop it into my head, like if I'm really stuck. It's from
Wow.
everywhere.
Now, have either of you experienced? It seems to come so natural to you that you write. Do you ever experience writer's block? I'm sure that's a question you've gotten asked as well.
I do sometimes if I'm very busy with other things like real life and I don't want to escape into my imagination. I want to, so then it's hard for me to change tracks. But most of the time I carve out time to write, and that it usually
And
works
that
out
works.
okay. Yeah.
How about you?
Never.
Never.
Never happened, Baruch Hashem.
Oh,
I know.
I should say once when there was some really serious stuff going on. So for a couple of, like I was supposed to be doing a chapter a week, and 1 week I couldn't do it. I just because if somebody was sick, it was just difficult. But no,
Well, when I
basically
wrote The
never.
Little Black Box, actually, that reminds me, it's a 3-book trilogy, and I wrote the first 2, and I was supposed to write the 3rd, but my father passed away right then, and I just didn't have a head for it. I could
Yeah,
not write
but-
fiction,
but-
so someone else did
But
the
I
3rd.
wouldn't call it a writer's block. There's
Right.
just sometimes life
You
does.
just can't-
Distractions, life distractions.
Life
Life
gets
gets
in the
too
way.
busy.
Life gets in the way.
Right.
Yeah.
You both of you are very busy writing. Do you have a chance to read?
Oh, yeah.
Like for leisure
I
purposes?
devour books all the time.
Uh-huh.
I love reading.
Anyone specific?
Well, you have to read a lot of
No,
manuscripts.
it's interesting. I remember I had a really hard day in the office, and what am I doing all day? I'm reading. And I come home and go, it's such a hard day. I got to relax. Give me a book. But it really is a
Different type
different
of
part
reading.
of the brain when I'm assessing a book
Right.
or when I'm just enjoying a
Right,
book.
there's leisurely
But,
writing, and then there's writing that
I
you're doing.
do have a
reading
problem
profession.
because I, as having edited for so many years, if there's something, I start editing books as I'm reading it. So, some books don't lend themselves, and I don't have enough really time to read as much as I would like to.
Now, Libby, I know you're working on a brand new series called the Starlight Sisters. Tell us a little about that and what's your vision for it.
So girls are always very interested in performing arts. And they attribute a certain glamour to people who perform. But unfortunately, in the outside world, it could be natsniistic, it could be people looking for attention in inappropriate ways. I wanted to do something Jewish and frum for that. So I created I created a new school that's a Beis Yaakov school in every way, but it also, after school, has a complete program for the performing arts. Music, singing, dancing. They take only totally super talented girls. When they interview the girls for the school, they also audition them, and they have professional teachers giving them voice lessons and dance lessons and music lessons on their instruments. And then the point of it is that they're going to perform at tzedakah organizations for women that would like top-notch performances. And the money will go to the tzedakah and also to the school, so everybody benefits. But it's an unusual kind of school. So this book deals with friendship issues like any other school. Each girl, there's going to be, I think, I'm envisioning 5 books in the series right now, and I start off with a few girls. It'll end up being 5 girls, and each one tells one of the books. So I did the first one now, and hopefully when that comes out, I'll be working on the second one.
Wow, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
And in addition to your talent, having dealt with both of you, I will say that I'm just as inspired and moved by your humility, both of you. You've made a really profound impact on the world of Jewish literature for the last 4 decades or so. And yet you're so approachable, and you listen to all of our complaints and nitpicking over here at ArtScroll.
Well, there's 2 things. Number 1, we're doing what we love, and number 2, we want the best product. If someone criticizes, if it's going to make the thing better, why be upset
You know,
about
they
it?
say, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. I have to say, I don't think
It's
I ever worked a
absolutely
day
true.
in my life.
Me too.
And I know her wow. So
Yes.
Miriam, you should continue.
Amen.
Amen.
Keep
Amen.
not working and keep enriching all of us with your beautiful writings as you've done for so many years. And we look forward to the new projects in Mirza Hashem.
Amen.
Thank you for
Thank
this
you.
absolutely spontaneous
so
and
much fun.
unscripted and unexpected treat.
Thank you. I'm sure it's a
Very
treat for our viewers
I
to
hope
finally
so.
hear from both of you and to see both of you. And thanks again for being here.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Hatzlacha.